Is that right?
Yeah, but
He said to me before we started that he likes controversy. So I didn't want to be controversial. He seemingly likes that. So if we could have any questions or comments, anyone who wants to start.
I think it's something that we mentioned a while back, and I can't quite remember what your conclusion was about it, which was Bobby Thompson famously never got past the tees, and yet there's Ned in the 1850s getting all the way over to Liverpool before they can't understand him. So what do you think was different?
You want to answer straight away? Or? I'd rather you talked amongst yourselves for a bit, to be honest. I'll answer this one, though, yeah? Bobby Thompson said himself he couldn't be understood south of Northallerton. Billy Purvis was exotic in Darlington. It was fun and funny noises, yeah. Ned played Dundee down to Leeds. And the only one answer to this, like most of us now, of course, he had two voices. Yeah. He apparently spoke with a local accent, not a trace of Irishness in his accent, because he grew up amongst Irish parents and siblings, yeah. But of course, there's reasons why Irish people didn't necessarily announce their, after what happened in Sandgate in 1851, particularly. Yeah? And Keith reminded me recently that there's questions of poor law and all kinds of things, because Ned lied about where he was born, and Ned's son lied about where he was born as well. And they both got the dates interesting wrong of their birth. Yeah? And people lie to census takers, you know. Sure, it goes on today. That's the best I can do, actually, really, to be honest with you. It's only a guess. It makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense.
But if I'm coming, that people would get returned to Ireland from Hartlepool in the 1850s. If you had a large family of 8 and they were going to cost you more to put them in the workhouse in Hartlepool, you just shipped the lot back over. So there's a good reason for Irish to still feel, you know, not to declare that they had an Irish link at all, else they might get sent back.
Yeah. Whoever would think about things like that happening today?
Well, does anyone else? We'll take a few questions, I think. Is that what you wanted?
Well, whatever.
Right, any further questions?
Yeah, it seems to me that, based on what you've been saying and based on what I've read myself, he seemed to be under the radar, this guy, and he didn't get the recognition he should have got. Do you think that was constructed to be in that way, or do you think he was just unlucky? Or?
Well, I mean, the other person who talks about his drinking habits was the former bankrupt brewer. Him and Thomas Allen make a nice pair, but even they said, I don't know if you know the name Sam Cowell, very, very famous music hall star in London. And they said Ned was streets ahead of him when sober. Yeah? But they always stressed the sobriety thing because they were temperance fanatics, basically. I don't think it was. Well, I mean, I just know what you think. I have a view about why we don't know Ned's songs. I mean, who else? Who he actually knew who hung the monkey was Ned's son? Hardly anybody. Who knew Cullercoats Fish Lass was one of Ned's songs? Can anybody name a third one?
Can to be a Q.
Can to be a Q.
Can to be a Q. Or you can to be a Q.
Yes, but he only wrote one verse of those three.
He did.
Yeah.
Joshua Bagman.
Joshua Bagman. Yeah. Got with permission. He got published it with permission. Yeah. In random rounds. Yeah. Why don't we know these other 120 songs?
That's the point I was making. Is that, was there an active movement to suppress him as an entertainer?
Oh no, I don't think he was put down in that sense.
It seemed as though he missed out on an awful lot of the credit he should have got.
Well, hang on a minute. How many acts do you know can last 15 years? Yeah?
Yeah.
He lasted 15 years.
But his longevity was in his writing, wasn't it?
Well, for us, for me, anyway, it's curious for me hearing the song sung. But 50 years, I've had to read them as though they were poems. Yeah. Until
Is it that in the 20th century people selected what they thought were good and they just didn't choose his? I don't know why. I mean, when I started putting together his songs, because I was interested in his songs, whether they sang, the tunes he chose are fabulous. I mean, there are songs in there as good as Keep Your Feet Still, Geordie Hinnie. There's one he sets to Oh Susanna. Why shouldn't he? Because, you know, the other songs are set to popular songs already done by other people in London. Some of them really sing well. And the great thing about him, and David would say more about this, is what a great entertainer he was. There is evidence from the time, isn't there? There's lots of evidence. You know, there's one guy says, a guy called Tommy, what was the quote there?
Tommy Sayers.
Yes, you'll be coming in Tommy's side, he was laughing so much at him. You know, it was Tommy Sayers, wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah. Some people thought that his patter, and the patter's in here as well, was the best part of the act. Because he was just dead funny and daft as a brush, yeah? But everybody knew he was quite bright, really. He was bright daft as a brush, if you know what I mean, yeah? And that went down well. He could keep an audience 2,800, remember? 4,000 at the weird. Keep an audience amused simply by playing the fiddle for 20 minutes.
But
Not many folk can do that today.
He would have offended the people who would act as patrons or promoters.
Sorry, Brian, I can't hear you, mate.
So wouldn't he have offended the people who would have otherwise acted as patrons or promoters?
Well, I see, right, with it. I see it as a longish transition. Certain numbers of halls emphasise their respectability, which is to do with drink, yeah? Other ones don't. The ones with respectability attract the capital. I mean, one of the biggest musical entrepreneurs you probably know comes from South Shields. Richard Thornton, Moss Empires, down the pit at 8 in South Shields. His father had a few quid, get a few beer houses. He gets hold of a pub for Shakespeare behind the what used to be Marks and Spencer's, where the theatre was. That grows. He insists on respectability, and that's what eventually comes through. Big capital respectability marginalises all of this. There was a I won't say a moment, but that's what academics say. Yeah, actually 15 years to be honest with you. Yeah, where it was possible for somebody who was comparatively radical, not a revolutionary socialist or anything, not even a socialist probably, but certainly very, very liberal, and anti-establishment, to make a living out of singing that sort of stuff. How many are there today like that? Around here? Now it's Glasgow's Long Dead. He was the last famous one, slightly famous one. At least he got a plaque in record time, the Alex. 2 years, supposed to be 10, apparently. He got 1 in 2. Must have had friends on Gateshead Council. Any
So
more
if he did get a plaque, where would you put it?
Who'd you? Yeah, well, it's going to go on that wall near the station, all being well. It's the negotiations are still taking place because Network Rail isn't the most cooperative organisation on the planet. I understand. And they got one for Edincourt got one for Harry Clasper, down by. That was negotiated with Network Rail, and the hope is the lads on the council are telling us that there's at least they know who to talk to now about that. We're hoping it will be in May sometime, but we'll have to see before the players start rolling around. That'd be good. And the mission, I didn't say this at the beginning, I normally do, the mission is, this is a critical fight against the national curriculum. That's what this is a contribution towards, Because we hoped to encourage some secondary students to shadow the professionals, write their own play and take it into schools. What a good idea. Guess what? Teachers daren't do it. More than the job's worth, and I understand that. There's a small window with 8 and 9-year-olds, and Peter sitting there is working on the possibility of doing that. If you know any open-minded school teachers, talk to Peter. He's doing quite well. Are they going to build that boat, Peter?
We'll see.
We'll see. He got one, presumably, craft teacher to think about getting
No,
kids.
we'll have to say it's in Cuthbert's secondary school actually.
Oh.
Just so happens. The librarian there, by chance, is also works part-time for Little Phil, so he's learning the local history. He loves it, but it was his idea, So he wanted to make it should we make it life-size so it could go in it, and I just thought the health and safety these days, just make it a little bit too small and modern, make it better. Because if it ends up going in the water, it remains away from this.
Well, it's even true with Jo Wilson. We had three of Joe's
great-grandchildren across from Canada, not long ago. And Cassandra is rather a forward-leaning person. She's 80-something. She was interrogating everybody she met. Do you know who I am? And asking whether they could sing even Keep Your Feet Still, yeah? And what we found was an inverse ratio. The kids said Joe who consistently, yeah? The parents might manage the chorus, it's a bit like Bladen Races at St James's Park. They get it wrong usually, but at least they make an effort. Maybe granddad or grandma might know a whole song, or most several verses and so on. It's on its way out, folks, yeah? On its way out. And that's why Ed and myself and Peter and Keith and a few others are quite keen. The classic example, what really focused me is, I was in the library, I was sitting next to a little poster about a little book on George Ridley. A member of staff sidles up and asks me what I'm doing, and I explain what I'm doing. She says, my daughter's in secondary school. She knows all about London. Doesn't know anything about Tyneside. That's what we're up against, really. That's the politics of it, if you like. Yeah, small p politics of it. And this is a start, which is why we're going, going west for it, really. Doing what we can. So Joe Wilson Buckley's next, then Billy Purvis, the showman, and then somebody who sounds as though he's from New Orleans, Blind Willie Purvis. And Bobby Noah. And then I'm done, somebody else can write the next books.
How many you got, Dave?
Right then, we're going to finish with the song sung by Judith and Beth, who most of us know very well.
We're a pair of fishwives.
Particularly in the Northeast Labour History Society, most of us will remember the fair concert that we had at the start, at the turn of the year. What a build-up I'm giving in mind.
Right. Hey, I'll tell you what, you definitely don't want this build-up.
Anyway.
Should we alternate? I'll do the first one. As the Cullercoats fishwife sit cosy and free, brought up in a cottage close on by the sea, to catch fine fresh fish for poor and the rich. Will you buy, will you buy, will you buy my fresh fish? Will you buy, will you buy, will you buy my fresh fish? Both barefoot and bare-legged I trudge many a week, with me creel on me back and a bloom on me cheek. I supply ye with flatfish, fine skate or fresh ling, and sometimes penny wilts, crabs and lobsters I bring. Will you buy, will you buy, will you buy my fresh fish? Will you buy, will you buy, will you buy my fresh fish? We've opted out of the patter. Would you like to do the spoken word?
Nah, from Yorkshire.
Do you want to have a go at this? Shall we have a go at the patter?
Yeah.
Let's have a go at it. Go on. I think there's none in this world can gain a living without a struggle. And I'm going to show you poor fishermen struggle hard for theirs and their wives and their birds. Aye, there's the politics again. My father catches the fish when there's only to catch, and money I could win me meat, and many a card would be neat, he risked his life on the open sea. That's what I call fishing for a living, and money and card wintry days, many a card wintry day, I gans about selling, but we all have our storms and ups and downs in life, and those money that riles and riches are not even no more content than me when I sing. Indeed. Will you buy, will you buy, will you buy my fresh fish? Will you buy, will you buy, will you buy my fresh fish? Callaharan for a penny, Callaharan. I works for me breed, hard for friends and never begs. And I hope the young gents when they peep at me legs. And more fine calafish, will you buy, will you buy? Will you buy, will you buy, will you buy my fresh fish? Will you buy, will you buy, will you buy my fresh fish? Who has rough fish outside, have a good heart within, as pure as the dewdrop, and I likes a drop gin. I'm healthy and handsome, quite willing and strong, to toil for me living, grind fish all day long. Will you buy, will you buy, will you buy my fresh fish? Will you buy, will you buy, will you buy my fresh fish?
Oh, may you be happy and prosperity attend you as long for there's fish in the sea. I cannot stop here, no, for I may wish before I can yam no to sell my fresh fish. Will you buy, will you buy, will you buy my fresh fish? Will you buy, will you buy, will you buy my fresh fish?
Well, we should have that every time, you know, finish it. We should have that every time.
Let's all rehearse it first.
Rehearse first, you'd be really good.
Yeah, well, you meet us by a good sing-song at the end. That's pretty good, that, yeah. And I thank Dave for such an excellent lead into and discussion on somebody that some of us knew about Corvan only from about one song or two songs. And what he's highlighted is the fact that class difference can even affect the music and culture of a community so badly. Certainly the point that you've been raising with us is to show that. And it's of interest to certainly people in our society that history isn't just the slogging and the fighting and the campaigning. For us it's bread and roses. There is a need for the fact that there is a culture there. And the culture has been there for years and years. Certainly, I'm really dying to read this book. Certainly, I bet that Corvan said that as well, mate. So, basically the books are here that is to be sold. When we talk about there being a launch, we don't mean you all stand and clap and the ship goes down and the books go home. What we expect is that people will purchase the book and read it and develop further on what Dave's been expounding tonight. Also, to list the thing about the play, listen to what's being said. It's certainly a fact that when we start, now we're beginning to start to get plays that expose our culture, plays that show what Northumbria and what the whole of the Northumbria, whether it be from Durham up into the Northumberland, that there is a deep, deep culture here. That it's like a seam that's in a wet pit. Sometimes you've got to have to get through there, and as such, that sometimes it's worth getting through that wet seam. Sometimes. Unless it comes in and then you have to go breaststroke. The main thing is sorry, but that was just a joke and not minor talk. I mean, it's a joke like that. The thing is that it's been not only an experience, not only an interesting understanding of what it's about. It's been quite exciting and quite really interesting. And as such, it only leaves for me to ask you to show your appreciation of Dave's contribution and also, obviously, their contribution.
With our fabulously rehearsed piece.
We promise to give you more notice. As far as I'm concerned, it's been one of the most interesting talks we've had for a long time.
Yeah.
And to show your appreciation in the usual way. Thank you. One last point. Dave, the secretary, will be passing round the usual a little plate for you to put your money on to help us pay for the evening. But don't forget the two things, the book and the play, because I think that's what the evening's been for. Thanks very much, everybody.